Man, the weather is so nice out today. I mean, look at how beautiful the sky is. Wait, what if the sky was a person? Yeah.
What's up, lads? How's it going? My name is Kira, and today we are going to be doing yet another character design challenge because I just can't seem to get it out of my system. I mean, it's just one of my favorite things to do. So today I thought it would be fun to do another prompt-based character design challenge inspired by different stages of the sky. Now, if you've been exposed to my art for any length of time, you've probably noticed that I have a bit of an obsession with the sky. I just think it's so beautiful, and I also think there's a lot of potential going on for character design, just with beautiful vibrant colors and interesting shape language with the different clouds. So I thought it would be the perfect inspiration for a trio of magical girls, which is very on brand for my channel. And speaking of on brand, I am also dressed like the sky today. So let's get started on some character design. Before I do, I want to mention that this video is sponsored by Skillshare, but we'll hear more from Skillshare a little bit later. Now let's go over to my screen and I will show you guys my mood boards. Come on.
Welcome to my desk space, aka my least convenient camera angle. Okay, so my idea for these magical girls is to do, of course, 3. So for the first one, I'm thinking about doing sort of a daytime sky with lots of clouds and lots of blue. And then for the second one, kind of like a nighttime sky with lots of stars and nebulas and maybe like the moon. And the final one I want to do sort of like a sunset inspired character with lots of bold colors and cool shapes with the clouds. I just think that that one is probably going to be already my favorite. And then secondly, since they're magical girls, we need clothing inspiration. And I have been recently so obsessed with these fantasy dresses that I've been seeing all over Pinterest. So I'm thinking the main base of the outfit part of the character design for these characters is going to be a sky inspired fantasy dress for each of them. I'm just really going to be indulging in my feminine side today because these are just so gorgeous. I want one. I want to make one. I'm actually thinking about making one. Would you guys want to see that video? Because I'm almost certainly gonna do it. So this is what my brain has come up with, and I am so excited to dig in. These are going to be absolutely
delicious
nourishment. I feel more powerful already. So let's do some rough sketches and get designing. So since these ladies are supposed to be a trio, I decided to begin sketching out rough ideas and thumbnails for them on a canvas together. I have a bad habit of forgetting to design ensembles to look good together as a group, so I'm trying to pay attention to that group aspect here and give them complementary shapes and poses. And I also really wanted to give them unique body types as well, which we'll get into a bit later. As you can see with our first girl, I decided to go with a pretty prominent fluffy cloud motif, basically like cumulus clouds. I wanted to base a lot of her dress's shape language on these clouds, as well as the shape for her hair and body type. As I mentioned earlier, I wanted extravagant fantasy gowns to be the main source of inspiration for their clothing, which is great because our cloud theme worked wonderfully with the silhouette of a long-sleeved off-the-shoulder gown with a massive skirt. While the sketch was looking pretty nice, I could only pull so much inspiration from the prompt, a day sky, so I immediately took to my saving grace, which is Pinterest. And as I was scrolling my old pins, I stumbled upon another style of fantasy gown, these amazing fantasy-inspired gowns that are ornamented with various types of armor. Of course, it turns out I was just ignoring the entire magical girl half of my prompt, because obviously an armor dress would be perfect for a magical girl. So with this newfound inspiration, I returned to my sky design and things began to move much faster. Now I had a pretty solid direction for spicing up this design, but the next problem was designing what kind of armor complemented the gown the best. I did a lot of experimentation here while referencing different armor dresses and styles of female armor from Pinterest. Obviously, I wanted to focus the armor on areas of her skin that were exposed so the dress didn't get covered up too much, but let's also say her magical form gives her an overall shield, since this outfit definitely isn't offering much practical protection. I started out playing around with the idea of these armor harnesses I've seen around Pinterest, but the shapes seemed to be clashing with the roundness of the clouds a bit, so instead I went for a more night-inspired, classical-looking armor design with a slight twist. Her overall vibe was really reminding me of a classical Joan of Arc-esque night melded with that old Hollywood Dior evening gown look, so that's what I rolled with. I also feel like this video idea was partially inspired by Zendaya's Joan of Arc Met Gala dress, so yeah, there's a lot of inspiration sources going into this design. At this point, most of my armor problem was basically solved, but then there was the issue of the relatively monochromatic color palette, so I brought in the other thing that's present in the sky on a sunny day, the sun. Her final design was supposed to evoke the idea of an old fairy tale knight, chivalrous and flowy, and just ladies with swords. So I designed the classical armor pieces like the pauldrons, greaves, and gloves to have sharp, delicate spikes and sky imagery. I also basically made her staff a giant holy sword with some sky gems on it, which I think really pulled the idea together. Since I was really feeling like the sketch was where it was supposed to be, I started on the inks. The ink style was pretty straightforward. I've been taking on a more painterly art style lately, so I inked with my transparent watercolor and dense watercolor brushes. While it came out looking a little messier than I would have liked, it really gave the cloud shapes a nice fluffiness and added a lot of variation to my lines, which always makes the color really pop. The color is where a lot of the big design choices happened. Since my prompt had a lot of bright, cool colors, I gave her a darker, warm skin tone to complement it and add contrast. And from there, I basically took the colors from the little color thumbnail I did earlier and added them in roughly the same way. I wanted a good separation between the blue and white, so I kept the white to mostly the lower area of the gown except for the collar. And to add even more of a sun motif, I made her armor a warm gold color. I made her sleeves transparent to give the design a light flowy feel, and added a darker gold color to accent the armor and staff. And from there, all we have left is a bit more shading and rendering, but I want to chat about ideas for her powers real quick. My main idea is that her powers would center on solar manipulation. This power can get a little OP, so I don't know the exact boundaries of it, but my main inspiration is basically how Doc Ock can make small suns in the palm of his hand in Spider-Man 2. From there, she can probably use that energy to ignite her sword, or just hurl tiny suns at people, but her solar energy can also help to heal small wounds and injuries and grow tiny plants, so she's also the group healer in addition to being the group tank. In terms of personality, I don't really have any of them fleshed out yet, but feel free to leave some suggestions in the comments. I would love to read them. But we'll return to finish the rendering of the illustration at the end of the process because now it's time for our night design. While I had a pretty clear direction for where I wanted to go with the first design, the second design wasn't so easy. I really like the thumbnail and the silhouette of the dress I had going. This is gonna sound weird, but the inspiration for this dress was mainly Anastasia's blue ball gown from the end of the film. It just gives me night vibes. So yeah, pretty on point, but from there the rest of the design was all over the place. The basic evening gown look was pretty nice, but a little too simple and resembled the off-the-shoulder look of the first dress a bit too much for my taste. It was also immediately a challenge to add armor to, so I began revising the design. The first look I went for was sort of this high-colored open busted look, but the shape just didn't feel very reminiscent of the night sky. It felt just a little bit too wood elfy, so I scrapped that and began focusing a bit more on other aspects of the gown and eventually tried adding some hip armor and a breastplate. I liked the overall vibe of the breastplate, but the hip armor seemed to clash a bit too much with the structure of the gown. In addition to the armor, I also wanted to give the ladies a headpiece, so I started experimenting a bit with that in her hair. Her hair changed a few times. I did like the long bob, it was really cute, but I ultimately went with my original idea of having her hair long and floaty. Since I had a bunch of halfway decent rough concepts going, I lowered the opacity and went for another pass of the sketch to figure out the details. I struggled with the shapes quite a bit here, but settled on using a lot of curves and crescents to allude to the moon. Eventually, I finally decided to do away with some of the bulkier armor in favor of this cage-looking armor, which was inspired by those armor harnesses I mentioned earlier. It's not super protective, of course, but I thought the hollow shape would give it a geometrical edge and contrast nicely with the darker bits in her dress. I used the same exact inking strategy here, nothing special. I did rely a bit more on my dense watercolor brush to clean things up a little bit since my first girl's line art was a little bit messy. But to get to the interesting part, coloring her was super fun. I wanted to give her dress and her hair a rich dark purple theme, so I went for a lighter skin tone for this character to add some contrast. And to add even more contrast, I made her armor a light silvery color. And from there, a lot of the color was about adding gradients and blending paint strokes. I know flat colors are a popular choice when making character designs because they can be drawn over and over again reliably, but gradients and blending here and there can add a lot of texture and color variation to even simple designs. So if you don't do this, try it out here and there because it's great for making a character's color palette more cohesive and more interesting. This method also allowed me to add some faint cloud and galaxy textures to the lining of her dress, which is really the selling point of this design. I added a lot of overlay and screen layers here and there as well, so I could add bits of blue and purple to make it pop. I also started shading and rendering parts of the design, even though I'll finish that part up at the end of the video. Overall, I just wanted to get a nice blend of colors and nice placement. You can see me adding blue to some darker areas of the dress to add richer blue tones to the design, and then later I do the same with purples. I'm also just generally going in and tweaking any areas that I don't like. I do that a lot with certain areas of the dress and the face, and then I finally go in and begin adding some of the important details. I made the sleeves on this dress transparent as well, so I added a lighter color to the line art in that area, and of course to finish, this is basically a galaxy dress, so I added stars and sparkles all over the lining and wherever else I felt needed it. And to finish it up, I thought the bottom of the skirt was looking a bit too bright, so I added some more shading to darken it up. And I finally colored the line art of a few of the armor pieces to give it more of an illustrative feel. In terms of powers for this lady, I'm thinking she has the powers of celestial manipulation. That means she has what I call solar teleportation. This is kind of inspired by how you can travel to other players in the Elder Scrolls Online by charting star locations, which is a game that I am an absolute slave to. She basically works the same way, but way faster. She has a mental connection with the stars and can teleport anywhere on Earth quick and easy by knowing what the sky should look like above her. She also has some lesser star summoning powers where she can shoot some energy with her staff, and she has a small amount of control over the tides via her connection to the moon. She probably has the most diverse skill set of the group, so she's the leader, and she's also the strategist of the group because her teleportation means she gets captured the least. That's it for her, but of course, we aren't quite done, but we'll finish the rendering up later. We're on to the sunset design. You know how at the top of the video I said I thought this one would be my favorite? It wasn't my favorite. Well, it was, and that's what ruined me, because I loved the sunset prompt so much that I decided I had to go and be a perfectionist about it. So from the beginning, I struggled to come up with something that I liked for this design. The first thing I came up with was just a basic halter top type gown with some armor pieces around the collar and on the arms and a high slit up the side. It was just kind of a mess. There was just so much going on because the main piece of inspiration for this design was one singular dress, and it's the same one I based Erin's uniform off of, so I didn't want to pull too heavily from that one again. And then I also had to face the challenge of I used clouds in the first design and I need to make the clouds look unique. So I tried to go with a mix of cumulus, stratus, and alto stratus, sort of just a lot of clouds that I associate with sunsets where I live, and from there I started inking, but I decided I hated it. So I went back to the rough sketch and started tweaking it again, this time with shorts and an open skirt, which, look, yeah, I just wasn't loving, so I started inking that one and decided, yep, hate this one too. So I went to a new file and tried to sketch out what I wanted the outfit to look like without the pose distracting me, and I generally liked what I came up with. It felt like a very cute sunset Sailor Moon girl. It had space buns and long curly hair. Of course I love it. So from there, I started over with an entirely new sketch and pose. I tried to keep in mind how it would look next to the others and gave it a complementary composition, and I went in. Unfortunately, something that was lost in all of the iterations was her more curvy body type. I thought I was giving her a larger chest and bigger hips, but no, she basically looks the same as the Night Sky girl, so that was frustrating. I need to pay more attention to stuff like this in the future, but I decided on a very low-cut bodice with some cloud-looking edges, with a leotard structure, with a giant heaping cloud skirt, and a similar looking cape that attached to some of the armor around the neck with armor on the legs, forearms, and hands as well. The overall vibe felt very Swan Lakey, and I have to say that a lot of my inspiration came from 50s showgirl costumes because I watched a ton of I Love Lucy growing up. Once I added more of the details, it was looking a bit less showgirl and a bit more magical girl. Since I mentioned I was kind of inspired by Swan Lake ballet costumes as well, I went for a subtle wing motif on the armor. And I tried to incorporate that shape into most areas of the design. I gave her staff a really weird abstract shape that's supposed to mimic stratus clouds with a setting sun, and I feel like it reads more as tree bark, but that's okay. From here, I moved on to the inking, which is business as usual, but I did try to add more of a cloud shape to the skirt and layer it a lot. The hair also gave me so much trouble. I don't know how or why I forgot to draw hair here, but yeah, it ended up a little messy. That's okay. I just covered it up later. Once again, color is the interesting part. I gave her a tan sort of caramel skin tone with rosy bits to complement with the other sunset colors, and for this design, I really depended a lot on gradients and blending colors, so I just began by blocking in really rough colors to figure out where I wanted everything to go. At first, it was feeling a lot more Barbie Mermaidia instead of sunset, so I color picked from my rough image a bit to get back on track. The reason I started with those colors was because I color picked them for my other designs because I wanted the designs to feel unified, but I did need to get back on theme a bit here. I added a nice gradient to the hair and a bunch to the skirt and the bodice. I tried to keep the inside of the skirt lighter and the outside darker, and that was really starting to read nicely on my thumbnail. I add a lot of my gradients by using selection tools and my airbrush tool with a small amount of density at a medium opacity. It really allows me to control the flow of the airbrush and make nice shapes. A lot of my quote gradients are also just added by blending with my blur tool. Once I started going for a more strictly sunset look, things really began coming together, and the ultimate trick up my sleeve to capture the sunset look was to use Clip Studio Paint's Sunset Gradient Map. Gradient maps are amazing for stuff like this, I swear. From there, I just erased away until I liked how it looked and kept coloring. I think what finally brought it together was adding a darker multiply layer over the cloak part and then adding a overlay layer over that. It just brought some much needed saturation. I also added some overlay over the rest of the image here and there and added some golden eyes, and finally the finishing touch of some stars and sparkles. So my ideas for the powers of this girl are pretty out there, but stay with me. Since the sunset is one of the bridges between night and day, I think she should have the ability to manipulate light and shadows. As the sun is setting, shadows get really distorted and warped because the angle is changing, so I thought her powers would be to manipulate existing light and shadows to basically put her opponent in a confusing, hallucinogenic state where they don't know what anything looks like and they don't know what's real or fake. Kind of like Genjutsu in Naruto, for lack of a better example. But in order to distort large areas and keep someone trapped in the confusion, she has to concentrate deeply, which can be a problem when they're fighting multiple enemies, so there is a bit of a weakness here. And now that we're done with the individual girls, this is where the fun begins. My final step was to bring all of my ladies into the same file so I could work on their designs together. I mainly want to bring the colors from each of the design into the others so that they look nice when they're next to each other. I also did the majority of the shading in this portion, so the shading style and the level of detail stays consistent between each design. I used some simple cell shading here and there, but I also used painterly shading methods as well as straight up painting over some of the areas that need it. I like to look at these really illustrative pieces in a more abstract way and add lighting and shading mostly to make the piece look pretty, even if it doesn't match up perfectly with the light source. Again, this is a pretty illustrative way of doing things. These designs are just supposed to look nice and don't even have full shading, so focusing on the shapes and the overall look is what matters for me here. It definitely helps everything to come together though. I especially like this multiply pass I did on the skirt of the sunset girl. The shading and the details added so much to this piece, and it really feels like it shows what a difference finishing touches can make. To actually finish these up, I pasted my folders back into my main file and tweaked a few more things and added a background to each. I basically just added a flat color and then lasso tooled some clouds for this background and then added some stars and comets, you know, your basic magical girl stuff. I did try to keep them on theme for each girl, but I did kind of go wild with the sparkles. Whoops. I'm not sorry. I added little painterly work inside for the clouds for a few of them, and it really added some softness and pulled the final pieces together. I did end up tweaking a couple of the final details off screen, but now they're basically finished.
Hi, it's me again, and this time I'm using my remote as a microphone. We're about to see the finished designs for our Sky Ladies, but before we do, let's hear a word from this video's sponsor, Skillshare.
Skillshare is a massive online learning community that offers classes on creative topics like illustration, painting, and even classes on video editing and production, plus countless others. You can access Skillshare's classes from anywhere, on your PC or phone. Full classes average at around 60 minutes, so whether you're looking to deepen your existing passions or dive into a new one, you can do it in a convenient way. If you're looking to learn something completely new, Skillshare's classes have a range of difficulty, so it's never too intimidating for beginners, and since their platform is focused on learning, it's also completely ad-free. And if you do binge their classes, it's no big deal because they're always adding new premium classes to their platform. Skillshare's entire catalog of classes now also offers subtitles in Spanish, French, Portuguese, and Dutch.
As a beginner, character design can be so daunting. I've learned tediously through the years from so many different sources, but if you want a good beginner class on character design, Skillshare's got it.
Melissa Lee's course, Character Design Crash Course, Dynamic Design in 4 Steps, takes you through the process of designing story-driven characters. Melissa starts you out with rough concepts and walks you through creating interesting shape language, stylized anatomy, and finally the finished product of a polished, detailed design that's beaming with personality.
So if character design inspires you and you want to learn the basics, you can watch this class for free right now because Skillshare is offering the first 1,000 people who sign up using my link in the description a free 1-month trial of their premium membership. So explore your creativity, sign up for a free trial, and check out Skillshare's entire library of content. Thank you so much to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Now let's see how those finished designs came out.
And here are the finished designs. This process has kind of been a lot. I didn't anticipate that these designs would challenge me as much as they did, but I did try to push myself a little further than usual in this video, and it kind of drove me insane. So please like and comment down below. These prompts were really limiting, honestly, but it did force me to get a little bit more creative and draw from more varied sources, which is always a good idea for character design. I definitely love how they came out, but they're feeling a little incomplete, and we don't want that, so let me know in the comments what you think their name should be. I'll try to pick some and mention it in the next design video. And if you have any suggestions for other character design videos I should do in the future, let me know those as well. I might even do a Magical Girl series because I think that would be super fun. So give me input on that and let me know if that's something that you would like to see.
That is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed the finished designs. I certainly enjoyed working on them, and if you liked them enough to want a print of them, I will have them available as prints and like maybe hoodies and stickers and some other stuff on my shop. So if you're interested in that, you can click the link down and below and go to my store and V-Shop and, you know, buy some pretty cloud things to go on your wall or on your person if that's your thing. If you enjoyed this video, you should also consider subscribing to my channel and turning on notifications. I've noticed most of my audience isn't subscribed, and I have to say, and if you want to support the channel even more, you can do so by liking this video and commenting down below. Tell me what other character design challenges you want to see, because I definitely intend on doing more of these in the future. But that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching till the very end. I really appreciate it. But now, if you'll excuse me, I am very busy. I have to go and play basketball with my brother and most certainly dunk on him.